So welcome all of you to our Catalyst On-Site Professional Learning for Higher Ed session. Of course, we are fully virtual today. In an ideal world, I would be there in person with you and your colleagues to present this session. But again, we're going to work with what we have, and we're going to have a great time learning all about Rosetta Stone Catalyst today, both from the learner perspective and from the faculty, instructor, or as we call administrator tools perspective. I wanted to introduce myself before we get in too far here. My name is Ben Pittman. I am the lead professional learning specialist here with Rosetta Stone, and I come from an educational background with over 14 years in a variety of different K-12 educational settings. Most recently serving as a World Languages Department chair, a director of blended learning, and also as a teacher of French and Spanish as well. Most importantly on this slide, however, I wanted to provide you with my direct email address. So if you have a pen or pencil or you'd like to take a screenshot, please feel free to jot down my email, benp@rosettastone.com. Not only will I walk you through the presentation today, I look forward to serving as a resource for everyone moving forward. So feel free to reach out to me via email anytime throughout this year, next year as needed. So here's a look at a big picture question that I always like to start with, and that is, what is Rosetta Stone Catalyst? So Catalyst is a language learning program, of course, that aims to change lives through the power of language and literacy education. We firmly believe that every person can learn to speak, listen, read, and write with confidence, and that is really what drives us to provide this platform to learners of all ages. So now we're going to take a look at our agenda for today's session. We're going to start just by seeing how those learners will get started with the program if they are new to Rosetta Stone. And then we'll go into an overview of Catalyst, and I will discuss what those learners will expect from the two different learning pathways that they will be working on. Now, learning pathways differ depending on the learner's previous experience or current proficiency level with the language. So we'll actually take a look at the learner experience on both of those platforms and explore some extended learning opportunities as well. After we're familiar with the learner experience on the browser-based version, we'll take a look at our mobile apps and make sure that learners are set up to take Rosetta Stone on the go. And finally, after you're familiar with all of those learner opportunities, we'll dive into the administrator reports. We'll examine the different settings and options that we have, as well as, of course, looking at the reports that will come in very handy for monitoring learner progress and also helping to get reports to send to other general faculty that may have students in their classes using the program, but don't have access to the administrator reports that many of you may have access to. Finally, we'll close with some tips on effective usage of the program, how to optimize their language acquisition, and how you and your learners can get additional support. So once again, if you have any questions as we go, please feel free to just throw those directly into the chat box. Now, Rosetta Stone Catalyst offers two different learning pathways, depending again on the proficiency of the user. There's a beginner path that's called Foundations, and that's again for new learners to whatever language it is they are learning. And there's the intermediate to advanced pathway, and that's called Fluency Builder. So the program actually starts by identifying the learner's proficiency level. It will explore both their current proficiency level and the target proficiency level, or language goal, as we call it. And after that, the learner will actually be placed in the correct or appropriate pathway. Now, on either pathway, students will have unlimited access to our online language lessons. And if your school or program decides to upgrade to our Catalyst Silver or Gold licenses, those learners could also have access to unlimited online tutoring with a certified native speaker. Now, at any time during their language learning and acquisition journey, those students can also track their own progress towards meeting their personal and professional language goals. So folks, let's talk a little bit about how those learners will get started. Now, your school actually has a fantastic setup where learners can simply click a link from Blackboard and they will actually have an account automatically created for them. So we actually are really happy to provide this shortcut. We don't have to have an administrator that goes in and actually enters manually a whole bunch of material to get that student's account set up. That learner can actually just click a link right from Blackboard and it will automatically create a new account for them. And again, they will actually come to this step as soon as they click that link. So they will see their name and their email address. Their email address is their unique identifier. That's going to be their username to log in every single time, unless, of course, they are using that SSO link where they are going to sign in directly. Now, once they come to this page and they have set their native language, they've chosen the language that they're learning, and they've identified their voice type and time zone, they will be ready to click agree and continue for our terms of use. And they will be ready to jump right in and continue on to the next step of the profile creation process, which is the questionnaire. Now, everyone who's starting Rosetta Stone Catalyst will complete this short questionnaire. It asks some questions about personal learning goals, about your program or class goals, any previous language learning experience, and actually just general attitudes towards language learning in general. The questionnaire, again, only takes about 5 minutes, but we include this important step because this allows the program to actually automatically generate some timelines and goals for each student. So this is the first step to individualizing the process for your learners. And based on their answers, it will come up with some goals and some frequency recommendations for how often and how long they're practicing in the program. Finally, after the questionnaire, those learners will be given an assessment to evaluate their current language skills. Now, that assessment might look a little different depending on the language that they're learning. So learners of English, Spanish, French, and German will complete a full placement test. Again, that full placement test will take around 30 to 40 minutes to complete, depending on the learner's current proficiency level. The assessment does need to be completed in one sitting. So again, it's important for those learners to know that before they start that placement test for English, Spanish, French, or German, they do need to set aside enough time to complete the whole placement test. Now, learners of other languages will have a shorter pre-assessment. So I know some of your learners may be using this for Portuguese, and so that language has a shorter pre-assessment, not the full-length placement test for learners of English or Spanish. Now, folks, after a learner finishes that placement test, they will actually see their own results page, and that looks a little bit like this. On this results page, the learner will see their scaled score there out of 400, and they'll see their CFR level. Now, the scaled score here, that's not that important for them to memorize or anything like that. They can kind of ignore that for now, but it is important for us to have it because we are going to use this to actually measure growth. So that's going to be their baseline score. And at certain intervals, however long your program administrators set, they're actually going to get another proficiency test. And so they'll be able to take that proficiency test, let's say after they've used the program for 2 months, and then we're going to be able to measure their new score against that baseline to actually have a nice numerical measure of growth. But in addition to that score, I also mentioned they're going to get their CFR level. Now, CFR stands for CEFR. For those of you that are not familiar with the CFR scale, that's the Common European Framework of Reference. And CFR is one of the most widely accepted norms for identifying overall language proficiency. So here's an example again of a results page. And you can see that this learner has been placed at the B2 CFR level. So the CFR level works with A's being beginner, B's being intermediate, and C's being advanced in terms of proficiency. So this learner would be at a B2. So that's sort of that upper intermediate proficiency level. Now, folks, as soon as a learner completes that placement test, that will, of course, determine where they're placed. So anybody down here in the A level is going to be placed into that foundations or beginner platform I mentioned, and anyone above that B1 is going to be placed into that fluency builder. So now that we've gotten through those setup steps and a student has been placed, now they are ready to access their language lessons. And from now on, they can sign in directly using that single sign-in link from your school's learning management platform. All right, so I'm just gonna pause momentarily to see if there are any questions about kind of that getting started setup experience. If not, we're gonna move right on and start exploring the learner experience in both of those platforms that I mentioned earlier. All right, so now we're gonna start off by actually talking about foundations. All right, the foundations pathway is again that beginner experience. And let's take a look at an account that has that foundations experience ready to go. So here we have a learner's Catalyst dashboard. So this is what it will look like when a learner signs in to Rosetta Stone Catalyst. And there's a few things that we should explore on this screen, again, just to make sure that you all are the experts in case any students come to you with questions. At the top left, you'll see here that we have those pre-made goals that I mentioned earlier. Again, these are based on that profile questionnaire that was completed during setup process. And if you have specific goals for your students, you can actually have them edit this manually right here. So again, based on my questionnaire, the program has set up 3 days of practice per week with 20 minutes per day. But if you would like them to actually work on that more days a week or for longer periods of time, we'll just go in here and edit that and update it so that they are able to more closely track their goals. In the top right-hand side, you'll see that we're going to list the language that the student is learning, and their CFER level is shown there as well. So again, that's helpful for them to know what CFER level they're in. And of course, that's what determines what product or platform they're working on. Now at the bottom here, at any time, you can see that a learner can track their own time and what we call training or usage time. It separates it out for this month or all time, and it also separates it for browser-based or computer access versus mobile app access. A student can export a report as well at any time and save those digitally for future reference. Now, at the very bottom right, I want to draw your attention to a pretty great feature that we have. This is called the interface language. All learners have the ability to actually change the interface of the platform. Now, that's going to be completely independent from the language that they're learning, but it's going to put all of the instructions, all of the directions, the tips, hints, and prompts in the program into, again, whatever interface language you see that's listed here. So these are the current languages we have available. And for example, if I wanted to actually put this for a student whose native language was Portuguese, for example, I could now go ahead and change this entire thing into Portuguese. So now a student for whom Portuguese is their first language, if they're learning Spanish, English, or French, they can go ahead and learn how to use and navigate the program here when they are going to be learning at their first time. So again, they can change this at any time, and it can be changed to whatever language you see listed here. Now, this is going to keep this page in that language, but also when they click into the product, you can see that it's going to maintain that interface language throughout their learning experience. Now, finally, you can see here on the left side in the middle, it says My Products, and that is actually where the student needs to click to access the lessons. So again, this is the dashboard. They click right in here into Foundations, and that's going to go ahead and actually access the Foundations program. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to explore Foundations first, and that is going to take students from a pre or below A1 level all the way up to B1 on that CFER scale. Again, that means that a student can progress from extremely limited or no language proficiency to actually speaking and responding in complete sentences. So let's dive in. Let's put our student hats on here, and let's go ahead and explore Foundations. Now, here we are in the Foundations program. And again, I'm going to actually take us over here to Unit 1 and Lesson 1. Now, what you'll see is that when I actually access the program, I was taken to a higher unit. That's because the program's going to remember where I left off and always take me to my next up recommended lesson. For now, let's explore Unit 1 and Lesson 1. And that's, of course, where we would come as a true beginner. Now, in Foundations, we recommend that you complete lessons and activities in order as the lessons work in a scaffolded and linear manner. So you can see that we're in Unit 1, and each unit has 4 different lessons. Now, in those lessons, you're going to notice that we always start off with something called the core lesson. So it's important that learners always do the core lesson first, and then proceed through the remaining focused activities in the order that they appear. Again, this is spiraled and scaffolded intentionally to go through here and again, do those activities in order. So for now, let's go ahead and dive into our Lesson 1 core lesson. This would be from the vantage point of a brand new beginner. So again, we're going to pretend like we're someone who is coming in here learning French from the very start with no previous language learning experience. Now, the first thing when working on lessons on a computer is that learners will have the opportunity to calibrate their microphone. Setting up their microphone correctly is important to ensure good speech recognition feedback. We recommend that you use headphones or earbuds with an attached microphone for the best experience. So all I have to do is click begin and then count to 5 in a normal speaking voice. They can count to 5 in any language of their choice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that the mic check is successful, it's going to take us right into the program.
Bonjour.
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 So as you can see, it's going to get learners speaking right away, but we have lots of different question types as well.
Une fille. Un garçon. Une fille. Un garçon.
So those green checks indicate a correct answer, and you can see that tracked below as well.
La fille mange. La fille boit. Le garçon mange. Le garçon boit.
I also want to take a second to point out some additional features that we have. So anywhere a student sees a blue play button, that means that they can hear that prompt spoken out again by a native speaker. And we can also expand the text size if we'd like with clicking on this small magnifying glass. The same is true for the images as well. I also wanted to show you what happens if we get something wrong.
Le garçon boit.
So what's important to note here is that, of course, we're going to let the learners know that they got something wrong, but they are always prompted to try again. We are never just going to tell a student, nope, that was wrong, and then move them on to the next question. They have to go through the same type of process that we all went through when we learned our first language, which is the ability to make a mistake in a risk-free environment, learn from the mistake, and correct the mistake. So of course, as language instructors, you all know how important and helpful that process is. And so we want to provide that same experience here. Now, since I did make a mistake, I'm going to see that information tracked again at the bottom. Now here I want to talk about our speech recognition engine. Rosetta Stone has something called True Accent, which not only is going to allow a learner to know that they said the right word when prompted, it's actually going to give them feedback on their pronunciation of that word and their fluency. Whenever we get to a speaking prompt, as I will demo for you momentarily, the student has an opportunity to actually get some feedback because their input is going to be compared to hundreds of different native speakers.
Une fille.
Une fille.
Une fille. Un garçon.
Un garçon.
Un garçon.
All right, so folks, at this time, what I'd actually like to do is provide you all with an opportunity to actually get in here and go through some of these exercises on your own. So I'm going to actually put in the chat box a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet has a list of demo account credentials in it. So there's a link I just placed in the spreadsheet. So if you're attending today's session on a computer, please go ahead and click into that spreadsheet. What you'll find on the first tab of this spreadsheet is a list of student usernames and passwords that you can use to actually access our platform on your own. So again, feel free to go ahead and type your name into one of those yellow boxes. The yellow boxes are going to be, again, where you can put your name and claim one of those usernames and passwords so you can actually sign into the program on your own. So again, please go ahead and just type your name or initials in the yellow box. That will let everyone else know that you're taking that username demo, and so that no one else will take the same one. Once you've claimed your username and password, you can click the link at the very top of that spreadsheet, or you can just type into your URL, trainersilver.rosettastoneclassroom.com, and you can actually go ahead and sign into the program. So it looks like I have Miss Vasquez has student 1. All right, Ms. Diaz is taking number 2. Again, if you are interested in experiencing this firsthand, go ahead and just type your name or initials in one of those yellow boxes, and you can log in as a student. The password for everybody is AGMUS. So what I'd like to do is provide 3 to 5 minutes for you all to actually go in to that demo account and practice as a student would. So again, let me know if you have any issues logging in, but hopefully you were able to access the Foundations platform. Again, if you'd like to unmute, or if you would like to type in the chat box that if you're having any issues, then I can try to walk you through getting in there. I do have a question. I just jumped on my computer. Yes, so I'll put the link again here so that folks can get in if you just joined. Again, I'll go ahead and copy the link one more time. So if you just joined, there's the link to the Google Doc. So you can go in there and claim one of those demo student logins. It looks like we have 3 claims so far. So again, there's plenty left. And this is how you all can actually log in as a student and choose any lesson in there and go ahead and work through it just to get some firsthand experience. Again, if you need any support, please let me know. And try not to write over somebody else if you saw that they had their name there in the program. If you're getting any sort of error, it's probably because somebody else is using that same demo account. So again, we have all the way up to student 25. So again, to just make sure that no one else is using that one, you can even skip down a few and use student 7, 8, 9. Those are available all the way up to 25. So you can choose any one of those as your screen name to log in. All right, I do see some feedback there in the chat that there might be some lagging delays. That's just likely because all of you signed in at the same time and are clicking on that same unit. So you might want to select a different lesson or a different activity just to explore. But again, just be patient with it while the program loads. We'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll come back together and we'll talk about how that went. What was your experience like? It may again ask you to do that mic check. If you have headphones with a microphone, you may get slightly better results on those speaking feedback questions. But again, we'll just give it another minute or two for everyone to practice and I'll stop talking. All right, folks, so I'd like to bring it back in. Now you're going to have access to those for the rest of the week. So again, if you want to go in and practice a little bit more later, that's totally fine. But I'd like to just come back together. If anybody has any feedback that they'd like to share, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat, or you can just go ahead and unmute and ask those questions at this time. But again, I wanted to see if you were experiencing the ability to answer one of those speaking prompts. I wanted to see if you could experience firsthand the different types of questions, including the listening comprehension, the matching, the speaking, the writing, and also how the lesson is very intentionally scaffolded and spiraled. So again, that's going to be the experience in our Foundations platform. And that is, of course, for those beginners to start from a lower proficiency level and proceed up to an intermediate level. Now I'm going to jump back into my own demo here so we can see. If I jump further ahead all the way to the end, I'm guessing that most of you weren't able to get all the way through that core lesson in such a short amount of time. But if you'll again come back to my shared screen, if I jump ahead here to my second to last question, I want to show just an example of how we progress students naturally through this language learning experience. So at the very beginning, you saw those super basic types of questions, just learning some different nouns, subject nouns, some being introduced to different verbs. We have the ability to learn some grammar via learning pronouns. But here at the end of my first core lesson, I have now the ability for a learner to really feel some empowerment and some motivation by looking at an image and describing what's happening in that image while producing language independently. So again, let's take a look at this type of question.
Elle boit. Elle mange. Il boit.
Il mange.
Il mange.
So again, here you're able to see that the student does need to explain what's happening in that image on their own. But of course, I like to call this one an example of use what you know to get to what you don't know, right? It's just like a puzzle. We're going to give them some tips and hints how to get there. But again, this is a really great feeling for learners. At the end of day one, they're already able to, again, describe in a complete sentence what they see in an image, which is, of course, the first step towards communication. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about how Foundations mimics our natural language learning process. We're going to, again, start just by introducing very basic phrases that might be like boy and girl, man and woman, things like that. And we're going to build those into basic sentences. Those basic sentences will introduce singular and plural and allow students to learn a few new verbs. And then we're going to progress from there to doing more complex usage of those same themes. So we're going to stick in the same themes, and we're going to go ahead and progress them to, again, that intermediate communication level so they can learn and practice to speak, listen, read, and write at that intermediate level. And again, this really actually mimics the natural language learning that we all went through when we were learning our first language, right? We didn't have translations. We didn't have grammar charts and conjugations. We used the natural visual sense of understanding the world around us to really drive that language acquisition. And so Rosetta Stone doesn't have those translations, those verb conjugations. It's going to use what we call structured immersion to place students in this immersive environment where every new vocabulary and grammar concept is always going to be paired with an image. Now, as you'll notice, the students have the ability to always see their lesson pages. And on each lesson page, the students will be able to see their scores and progress. If they have to stop in the middle of an activity, that's fine. It'll save all of their progress for whenever they're ready to come back. If they did not pass an activity on their first attempt, it will show them the score they need to pass, and they can go ahead and try again. And if they did pass, it will let them know that they passed and even give them the opportunity to go back and just correct that one or two incorrect questions they got to get 100%. Now, we do have 3 different minimum passing scores depending on the rigor or difficulty of the activity itself. So again, you can see here that for some of the less rigorous activities, the learners must earn a 90%. For the most rigorous ones where students have to produce their own language independently, they must earn a 75% to pass. Now, folks, in our demo earlier, we saw an example of lots of different question types, but I did want to also show you what it looks like when students begin working on a writing activity. So I'm going to go back to home and access that unit menu. And I'm going to proceed forward and take a look at one of these writing activities. Let's go to the unit for writing. So this is still in my first unit. So this is going to still be relatively simple. A writing activity is going to look something like this.
Le soleil.
So you can see we just heard a word and the student is expected to go ahead and type in that word or phrase. Now they can either use the on-screen keyboard or their own physical device keyboard if using a laptop. And again, you'll also notice that my on-screen keyboard looks a little different than my physical keyboard. That's because we're going to include the accents and characters in the language they're learning that are not present, of course, on their computer. You'll also notice there's a blue box here, and that's where we can access even more accented characters that, again, aren't available on the main keyboard. So here I can go ahead and type in using my keyboard here. And I can see if I got it right by pressing enter.
Un ballon.
And of course, if I get it wrong, I want to see what happens here. So I said un ballon, and so I go ahead and see if I got that right. I did not get that right, and it's highlighting the first area that I made a mistake. Now, I know that this has ON at the end, so that means that that's not actually an incorrect letter, but that there should be something else there instead, which of course is my reminder that this word has two L's.
Un poisson.
Now, while we're here, I want to show you one additional feature that is super helpful, especially for English language learners. All students have the ability to access what's called our alphabet tool. So by clicking on my name here, I can come down and click on where it says alphabet, and that's going to pull up the alphabet tool. Now, folks, I have this set to French. So again, this is going to be very helpful for learning the different letters of the alphabet, the names of the letters themselves,
A.
but also for phonetic practice, learning the sounds that this letter makes in different scenarios. So again, think about an English language learner. They are trying to learn all the many different ways that our vowels are pronounced. And so they can come to the alphabet tool anytime and see that there are different ways. For example,
Danse. Lait.
so again, they can learn about hard and soft consonants.
Garçon. Fromage.
They can learn about all of the different vowel sounds. They can learn about double consonants. They can learn about all of the different consonant combination sounds that we have if they're learning English, if they're learning Portuguese, if they're learning and practicing Spanish. This alphabet tool is, of course, customized to each specific language. So again, I just wanted to point that out, and it's accessible at any time in any lesson for those learners to practice, again, not just the names of the letters themselves,
G.
but also the different ways that that letter sounds in various different scenarios. So again, when you get back into your demo account later on, feel free to access that alphabet tool. A lot of teachers actually use the alphabet tool for learners to make flashcards, but not for the sake of actually memorizing or learning the meaning of these words, but purely for pronunciation purpose. So you could actually have a little quiz for your students, having them speak these words out loud just to see if they can pronounce it correctly, not necessarily focused on the meaning of the word, although of course that is important and could be very helpful as well in combination. Now, folks, you'll see at this level, again, I'm in Unit 1, and so this is still pretty basic. I want to make sure you know that students are going to have the opportunity to engage in writing in this program. So as I proceed up to higher units and higher levels, the program will, of course, increase in rigor and complexity as well, and the students will have to type entire sentences that they hear. And then finally, in the uppermost units, they actually have to respond to questions with complete sentences. So they will have the opportunity to put their language to the test. Now, folks, as you've noticed a few times, I've navigated to different units. To navigate to a different unit, all students need to do is click this grid in the top left where it says Show Menu. Now, this brings us to our full unit menu, and you can see that for my whole curriculum, I have 20 units. And each unit, of course, is accompanied by a short description of that unit theme. Now, I mentioned earlier that we highly recommend that learners proceed in order, okay, based on their placement. So they don't have to start at the very beginning. If a student has some language learning experience, they can go ahead and start in Unit 5, for example, but wherever they do start, we recommend that they go in order. Again, this increases in a linear way, and the language is scaffolded and spiraled very intentionally. But for more information about what exactly is covered in each unit, we recommend using a resource that is available for you all to download called the Scope and Sequence Guide. So I'm going to go ahead and access the Scope and Sequence Guide for Foundations. Again, this is going to list every unit, and then again, each of the 4 lessons in that unit, and tell you exactly what is taught in that lesson. So again, you can see the vocabulary and core concepts that will be introduced, as well as the grammar and usage topics. And again, if you're planning to incorporate Rosetta Stone into your lessons, or if you know that your learner is looking to learn about a specific content, you can come to the Scope and Sequence Guide and you can tell them where to go, or of course, they can download this resource on their own. For example, let's say that you are doing a unit on going to a restaurant and you want to have them practice in scenarios of ordering or making a reservation. Well, I know here if I go to Unit 8, for example, I have a whole lesson on dining in and dining out, food and restaurant language. And you can go ahead and assign that to your learners or recommend that they work in Unit 8, Lesson 1 to practice with that specific topic and content and develop their proficiency for that specific scenario. So again, the Scope and Sequence Guide can be really helpful for lesson planning, for addressing a specific situational need, or just for previewing what learners will be exposed to as they proceed through the different levels of the program. So folks, just to kind of review, each of those units contains a variety of different activities. The students should start with that core lesson and then proceed through the various additional activities. Again, there are a variety of different ones to make sure that we are addressing all 4 communicative modalities, of course, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Those learners will also have 4 review activities sprinkled into each one of those units. And then finally, we have our last activity that I haven't talked about yet, and that's called the milestone. The milestone shows up at the very end of each unit. So it's a summative activity, and it really takes the structured immersion approach I mentioned earlier to the next level by simulating real-life immersion. Now, this is going to rely on active participation by the student because the milestone places the student in a 2-way conversation with pre-recorded native speakers. So what I'd love to do now is actually have you all go in and experience the milestone in your demo account. So let me just demo how this works first, and then I'll have you all go ahead and access it. You can choose any unit. I recommend Unit 1. You can also go into Unit 18, which is an interesting one. And you are going to want to navigate to Lesson 4 and then scroll all the way to the bottom. So what you'll see is that a series of pictures will slide across the screen, and this will set up the learner's place in the story. Then they'll meet some people in the scenario that will start to speak to them, and the learner will have to ask and answer questions that fit the context. So here we can see 2 people going to a movie theater.
Quel est le type de film que tu aimes?
Quel est le type de film que tu aimes?
Quel est le type de film que tu aimes?
J'aime tous les types de films sauf les films tristes.
As-tu vu ce film?
As-tu vu ce film?
As-tu vu ce film?
Oui, je l'ai déjà vu.
So you can see up to this point, it's been giving me some prompts, right? Either visual or auditory. Now it's going to start having me speak some sentences, either asking or answering questions all on my own. C'est quel type de film?
C'est quel type de film?
C'est une comédie.
Quelle est l'histoire de ce film?
Quelle est l'histoire de ce film?
Quelle est l'histoire de ce film?
C'est l'histoire d'un étudiant en biologie qui fait une expérience dans le laboratoire de sa classe.
All right, so I'm going to stop there. And what I'd love for you to do is go ahead back to those demo accounts that you are working in and see if you can experience one of those milestone activities on your own. Feel free to go ahead and just do unit 1 if you would like. So again, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to navigate one more time. You're going to go back to the home tab. You're going to be in unit 1. You're going to navigate to the lesson 4 tab, and then you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says milestone, and you're going to begin the milestone. So again, let me know if you have any questions, but I would love for you all to take a few minutes and actually work firsthand in the milestone. Again, if you didn't have a chance to sign in before, we still have several different demo accounts available. Student 6 through student 25 are still available usernames, and the password is AGMUS. So I'm going to go ahead and mute while you all practice that speaking and listening activity, and we'll come back in about 4 to 5 minutes. All right, folks, I hope I'm not interrupting anyone who wants to keep going, but I do want to make sure that we get along with the session today. And I did get a question about the language. So currently your demo accounts are of course set to be learning Spanish, but I can certainly change that for you if you are interested. So I'm not going to be able to get to that right to this moment, but if you would like to try out a different language, you can actually just send me an email, benp@rosettastone.com. Please include the demo student number that you were using, and I can go ahead and change that language for you to any one of our 24 available languages other than Spanish. That way, you have the rest of the week to go ahead and practice in a different language, perhaps one that you're less familiar with, so you have a more realistic experience of learning a new language. So once again, benp@rosettastone.com if you'd like to have access to that account in a different language. Again, if you have any questions or comments about the milestone, please let me know at this time. But hopefully you were able to get to the experience of having to ask or answer a question, having to infer from an answer what the correct question should be, and really have a good firsthand experience. As you noticed, the milestone provides students with an opportunity to really synthesize everything they've learned in the unit and develop confidence in applying their new skills in a conversational setting. So again, please let me know if you have any questions in the chat. If not, we're going to go ahead and continue exploring some of our extended learning opportunities in Foundations. After that, we'll take a quick break and then we'll jump into the Fluency Builder platform. All right, that was my 5 seconds of obligatory teacher wait time. I don't see any other questions there in the chat, so let's jump right into our extended learning opportunities. Now, in addition to practicing in the Foundations lessons, Rosetta Stone also provides your learners with extended learning opportunities that they can access simply by clicking Explore All Content, the second tab located up here in the top navigation bar. Here, your learners can access our live lessons, our on-demand videos, and other extended learning opportunities that I'd like to quickly introduce to you today, such as stories, phrasebooks, and our audio companion. So the first thing we'll talk about today is our stories. Our stories are going to be a fantastic way that your learners can take their language acquisition journey to the next level by engaging in one of dozens and dozens of stories that allow them to take their new language skills and put them into play. So you can see I have 1 through 20 listed across the top. Those align to those 20 units that we just talked about in our full scope and sequence. And here, after a student has worked in a particular unit, they can come to the story section and work on reading, listening, and speaking a story based on what they heard. So a lot of the stories are really fantastic because they bring an extra way to introduce culture into our platform. No matter what language the student is learning, the stories are going to be different, and they're based, many of them, on a region or a culture that speaks the language that those learners are, again, learning at that time. So you can see some of my stories here are going to be very typical to certain countries or certain cultural events for people that speak French. And so that is going to be, those are going to be specific to this actual language. If I was going to have you all go in and explore, then your stories would be different. Por ejemplo, you would see in Unit 1, there's a story about un niño de Amazonia, okay? And so those stories are aligned to the language that they're learning. I did want to just click into a story quickly to give you a quick view of the 3 experiences of a story. Again, they might have to do a mic check one more time to calibrate that audio input. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here we can see I have 3 tabs up here across the top. The read tab is the first tab, and that's where I'm going to see a short story. And if I have any of those blue words, it means that a student can actually hover over that to get an image of that vocabulary word. Now, once that student has read through the short story on their own, then they're going to get to the listen tab. On the listen tab, they can listen to this story read aloud to them by a native speaker.
La cabane dans un arbre. Un garçon et un chat noir et blanc sont dans une cabane dans un arbre.
So again, they can follow along and they can practice their listening comprehension and, of course, pronunciation. Finally, we have the Speak tab. And on the Speak tab is where the learner is actually going to record themselves reading that same story again out loud. The reason we have this is so that students can not only listen to themselves speaking in the target language, but we're also going to provide them with some feedback based on how they did. La cabane dans un arbre. Un garçon et un chat noir et blanc sont dans une cabane dans un arbre. Le garçon lit un grand livre et le chat dort. So now you can see some of the feedback that I got, some red words, some gray words, and some vertical lines. To further explain that feedback, you can see here that the vertical lines are going to indicate a pause was detected. So again, interrupted fluency is going to be noted by that vertical line. The gray words indicate that that word was skipped or not heard by the program. And the red words indicate a word that was mispronounced. So the learners can get some feedback on their pronunciation and fluency. They can make lists of trouble words and practice those, or they can, of course, go back to that listen tab and listen to the native speaker to correct their pronunciation. So again, folks, dozens and dozens of stories available, and they are aligned to the vocabulary and language structures that the learners are practicing in each unit. Also in the Explore All Content tab, I wanted to quickly mention our audio companion. The audio companion is listening and speaking only. So this is great for exercising, driving, or other times when a student can't actually interact with a screen. This is where they can download a whole unit's worth of content, listen and repeat, listen and repeat. Finally, we have our phrase books. Our phrase books are a great way for students to, again, practice listening and speaking, but also get some additional feedback on the screen. So here you can see these are just common phrases. So if a student is preparing for a specific situation, they can come here and they can get these helpful phrases that will help them learn how to navigate these real world scenarios. Again, they can hear it spoken out loud.
Excusez-moi, comment vais-je à la bibliothèque?
They can record themselves to practice pronunciation. And if they really need a little extra help, we're even going to include some optional translations just in case. So again, folks, Explore All Content, as you can see, provides lots of extra opportunities. We have our live lectures that happen on a weekly basis, our on-demand videos, stories, phrasebooks, and the audio companion. Last but not least, I wanted to show you how a learner can adjust their settings. This gearbox in the top right corner opens up the settings window, and I have audio settings and course settings. The audio settings, most importantly, allow students to actually change their pronunciation scoring. You can see here I'm on a level 3 out of 10. That means that a speaker will be held to a certain expectation, medium to low, in terms of their pronunciation. If pronunciation is something that you're deeming more important, you could have the student increase that level. And so now this learner will actually be held to a slightly higher standard in terms of how their speaking activities are scored. We also have our course settings. Our course settings allow you to modify how your typing or writing questions are scored. So here you can see if we want it to be case sensitive, punctuation sensitive, and or diacritic sensitive. Diacritic sensitive is referring to those accents, of course. So again, if that's not as important, if you don't need your students to use proper accents, you just want to know if they can spell a word correctly, we could actually turn that off and they'll still get credit for completing a word, even if they don't have the accents. I prefer to leave it on. You can also see for languages other than English, we can actually change the keyboard layout entirely. And so that actually mimics a real keyboard for most French-speaking devices. So again, folks, those are the different settings that we can change and apply in case your students want to go ahead and modify those settings. All right, everybody. So that's going to do it for foundations. I just want to see if there are any other questions about the, again, beginner pathway there. If not, we are going to take a 3-minute break. And then we're going to come back at 10:10 and we're going to dive right into Fluency Builder. And actually, folks, about 70% of your students are using Fluency Builder. So this one is going to be a little bit more relevant for the majority of your learners. Again, whether they're working on English, Spanish, or Portuguese. So again, we'll come back at 10:10 and keep on going. All right, everybody, we're going to jump right back in. Thanks for sticking around. And we are going to now explore the Fluency Builder pathway. And again, this is where the majority of your learners are actually currently enrolled. So as I mentioned before, if you are an intermediate or advanced speaker already, you will be placed into the Fluency Builder pathway. And Fluency Builder is, of course, going to be taking learners from the end of that A2 or B1 level all the way up through C1 on that C first scale. This means that you can go from having a general understanding of, most basic reports and texts to really being able to discuss and interpret all texts in much more detail. Now, unlike foundations, this program does not need to be done in order. Instead, learners can choose which topics work best for them from our selection of different courses. Each course, as you can see here, consists of different lessons, and each of those lessons is made up of several different, what we call micro activities. These activities only take 2, maybe 3 minutes, so they are perfect to fit into your learner's busy schedule. Now, the Fluency Builder program allows learners to develop specific skills or vocabulary pertinent to certain professions, industries, or fields of study. So this is where those learners who, again, already have that intermediate proficiency can really zero in on the things that are most helpful for them. So with that, let's go ahead and do a quick demo of Fluency Builder. And then I have some demo accounts for you all where you can go in and explore this on your own as well. So here I've switched over now to a different demo account. And again, we can see up here, this is actually a student learning English, and they're in that C1 CFR level. So that means that they were placed into Fluency Builder. When I click here to launch Fluency Builder, you'll see that in some ways it looks slightly similar to foundations, but it's a little bit different in a few different ways. Now, when we sign into Fluency Builder, you'll be on what's called the course dashboard, Here you can see my courses. And so you can see that this learner has added courses into their course dashboard, such as the automotive industry, after sales and customer service, communicating in the medical field. So again, you can see a variety of different industries or fields there, and there's lots of different courses that are available. These, again, are designed to help your learners develop those specific professional skills or industry-specific language terms. Now, if you would like to access all of the courses, you're going to go here to the top right and click on Add Courses. This will allow me to add courses that I would like from the different categories and topics provided. So again, for example, if I am in the health and medicine field and I want to pursue my pharmaceutical degree, I'll go ahead and add this course. I'm going to go ahead and remove this other one. And again, now I have those courses listed. If I go back, I'll see the pharmaceutical industry one there. But again, I can go to these other ones, IT and telecom, for example. I even have other ones that are specific to travel and hospitality. So again, lots of different courses. And once I've found the courses I want, again, I add them to my course dashboard. And now I can see all of the different courses that I have. So there's the one I just added, right? Pharmaceutical industry. And I have, again, several other courses as well. Now, once we have a course, we want to go into that course, and then we're going to see the different lessons. So some courses only have a few lessons, whereas others have a whole lot. If I get into this one, for example, you can see that this has 6 lessons. And again, each lesson has those activities in it. So for example, if I go into this first activity, un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq. You'll see we have lots of different activities as shown here on the left-hand side. The first thing we might see is a video, an audio recording, or a real-world document. So again, this one you can see is all about vehicle registration. So if a learner was looking to register a new vehicle, this will be a great place for them to come and practice with the specific language that they need in English to prepare them for that specific scenario. After they have been able to read and familiarize themselves with the document, they'll have the opportunity to learn all of the different types of vocabulary that they need. And again, vocabulary is now presented in an interactive fashion. So they're not just reading, they can listen.
License plate number.
And they can speak. License plate number. And they'll get feedback based on their pronunciation. So again, if they are going to take notes in a separate notebook, we highly recommend that they do bring notebooks to their Fluency Builder program. That's not as important for foundations. So again, after they have the initial introduction lesson and vocabulary, you can see for this type of lesson, we have some multiple choice. We have fill in the blank. And again, these are just a few different types of activities. In different ones, we have different types of activities. So here's a video with a transcript. And then we'll also, in some, have more traditional direct instruction of vocabulary. So you can see in this specific one, they're learning about the construction of the present perfect. So again, you could certainly recommend that students take notes in an example such as this. Now, don't worry, folks. We also have listening and speaking activities as well in Fluency Builder. So again, we can click into others and we'll see that those are going to have different types of activities. And again, many of them require us to speak. Now, as I showed you earlier with foundations, we have the scope and sequence guide. We also have a scope and sequence guide for Fluency Builder. So I know that many of you are interested in having your students practice a specific communication mode out of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So the great thing about Fluency Builder is that it allows us to actually view all of the courses and all of the lessons. But more importantly, in the second column, it's actually going to list out the targeted skill for each specific lesson. So again, here you can see in the business meeting section, some of these lessons target listening, speaking, and reading. Others all 4. Others may only have speaking and reading or reading and writing. So again, if you're looking for specific opportunities for students to practice specific skills, and it's not as important about the content, you can choose skills based on, again, the skills themselves. Of course, if you'd rather them choose the lessons based on the content, then you can see we're going to try to vary which of the skills are being used as much as possible. All right, folks. So with that, it's going to be your turn again. And so what I'd like us to do is go back to that same spreadsheet. Now, if you are just joining us, I'll go ahead and share that link one more time. And on that spreadsheet, what I'd like you to do is navigate to the second tab at the very bottom where it says Fluency Builder. And again, there you'll see some yellow boxes where you can go ahead and claim one of those email addresses. And we're going to log into Fluency Builder and take a few minutes to explore that program. So once again, folks, if you're still with us, please go ahead and click into that Google Doc. Again, I put the link in the chat box. And then you can go ahead and choose one of the demo accounts. Now, these are different demo accounts than we used before. And there's a different login website as well. So once you've chosen your username, you're going to click the link to go to login.rosettastone.com. And then you're going to go ahead and put in your email address and password. The password is AGMUS1. So go ahead and sign into your demo Fluency Builder account. Again, you want to click on the second tab at the bottom of that spreadsheet where it says Fluency Builder. I can see some folks are in there now. And please, again, don't write over someone else. You could even go ahead and skip one. Again, we have 16 different demo accounts available. So this will allow you to log into the Fluency Builder program. I can see demo 1 has already been claimed, so please don't use demo 1. But demo 2 through 16 are available. Again, you do need to sign in with an email address listed there on the spreadsheet. As with the other accounts, I will leave these available to you for the rest of the week. And so if you don't have enough time or have the opportunity to get in there and practice today, you will still have an opportunity for the rest of the week to have access to this demo account. And again, feel free to get in there and click around, explore some of the different courses. Okay, maybe depending on what you teach or what departments you support, you can go ahead and find if there are any specific Fluency Builder courses that are relevant to your specific department. All right, I'm going to go on mute here for about 3 minutes or so, and then we'll jump back in. Please let me know if you have any questions as you explore Fluency Builder. All right, folks, we're going to come back together now. I could see several of you were in there practicing Influency Builder and exploring the platform. Again, for those of you who did not decide to do that, you will still have access to those demo accounts if for some reason you would like to go ahead for the rest of this week and explore. If you have any feedback, I'd love for you to share either by unmuting or by typing in the chat box. Hopefully you are able to notice some differences between Foundations and Fluency Builder, of course, and take away those main differences to share with your learners in case they have any questions. Now, folks, normally at this time, I talk a little bit about our tutoring opportunities. Now, your school does not currently have access to tutoring. Again, that's a slight upcharge in the licenses. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, of course, because it's not an option currently for your learners. But I do just want to quickly mention it in case this is something that is of interest, and it would be something that we would have to, of course, talk about with the academic administration to decide to pursue for future years or semesters. So we do have available live tutoring, and our tutors provide sessions 24/7. They are all native speakers for whatever the language is that the learner is practicing. And they go through a rigorous training and quality assurance to make sure that they are really meeting the standards of our expectations. Our language tutoring is embedded within the platform. So there's no third-party video program that your students would need to download. They actually log right into their same existing Rosetta Stone accounts, and they can access this scheduling platform to schedule, reschedule, cancel, and actually view the tutoring sessions. We do have options for group tutoring and one-on-one tutoring sessions, again, directly through the platform. So I'm happy to answer any more questions if you have them about tutoring. Again, it's not something that your students currently have access to, but I just wanted to make sure that you all know it's available if, of course, the funding permits it. So with that, folks, we are going to talk a little bit about our faculty and administrator tools. Before we do that, though, I would love to see if anyone is willing to share the attendees with me today. Do any of you have your own administrator accounts already? If you do have an administrator account, please go ahead and let me know in the chat box. Again, if you do not yet have your own administrator account, we will work with your program administrators to get you set up with one if you are supposed to. All right, I see some feedback in there. A couple folks aren't sure, and then somebody does not. So that's just helpful for me as I go through this next piece to make sure that I am demoing for folks that are not currently possessing an administrator account. Again, if that's something that you believe you should have, I've been working with Ms. Caballero to set those up. And so that would be the point of contact for getting access to an administrator or reporting account. For now, we'll just stick with my demo account, and we'll get a little bit of a preview here of what is available to you if you are logging in as an administrator instead of a learner. So let's go ahead and take a look now at our administrator tools dashboard. To log into the program, you're going to again use the same login.rosettastone that we looked at earlier. So I'm going to actually log out of this one and sign back in now as an administrator here. So now I'm looking at my administrator tools dashboard. This is the main dashboard that you will see once you get access to an administrator account. Now, you can see these 5 icons. Some of you are going to only have access to certain icons based on the level of privileges or access that your program administrator provides. Again, this is where we can do all sorts of things like change the settings, update the licenses that are assigned or allotted to your learners, add or edit members of your organization, view, create, and remove groups, and most importantly for our process today, look at reports. So in that settings tab, you're going to see here, we have the ability to actually modify the number of days that students will practice in the program before they get their proficiency tests. Remember, I mentioned before that each student takes a placement test at the beginning, and then after a specified number of days, they will get those interval proficiency tests. And this is where we can measure their growth over time. These settings are also going to include opportunities for your administrators to decide whether the learners can choose their own language and whether or not they can skip the proficiency test. On the users tab, this is where you'll be able to see all of the users registered in your organization. You'll be able to see if they're active or not. So you can still have registered accounts that have not been assigned an active license. That means that we can still look at all of their data in our reports, but they actually won't be able to log in and use the program to access those lessons. You can see what language they're studying, if they are in a group, and again, when they completed their profile and accessed the program for the first time. Now, speaking of groups, some of you may want to create your own groups that students can be placed in once they have registered their account. Groups are optional, but they make it really, really helpful for our reporting purposes. So again, this is just a demo account, and you can see the various different groups I have set up here. To create a group, all you have to do is click here. And again, name that group. So now that I've named my group and I save that group, I could go ahead and place all of my students that happen to be using Rosetta Stone for a specific course that semester in the appropriate group. And as I mentioned, it makes it much easier for filtering or sorting reports if we create and place students in groups. Finally, what I'd like to do now is walk you all through the various reports that we have available in our last and final tab, the Reports tab. So here we are on the Reports tab. Now, the very first thing I want to mention before we actually dive into the reports themselves is the date range. So by default, the Catalyst reports are going to be showing you the last month of activity. So again, just keep in mind that when you access this page, it's defaulting to the last month. So you may want to go ahead and click that and specify the date range for data that you're looking at. So again, you could choose all time, you could choose the last week, or you can choose your own custom date range by picking the dates of your choosing. So now that I've chosen my date range, I am going to be able to see all of the information about my learners. And we're going to start at a high level here, and then we're going to narrow down and get into much more specific detail. So now that I'm looking at my reports, I now have the ability to, again, get some high level data just to keep tabs on what everybody's doing. Now, remember those groups I mentioned earlier? This is where you can, again, filter to the specific groups. So for example, if I don't want to look at all of the thousands of students that you have in your network of fabulous university campuses, you could, again, now just pick a specific group, or even maybe we have each campus set up as a separate group. But again, once you've narrowed down your date range and once you've narrowed down your group, Now we can go in and look at the 3 different tabs that we have available for the Catalyst usage report. Now, this is called the usage report because it's mostly focused on time. How much time have students spent using the program? Now, you'll notice that we are going to break down students based on what pathway they were placed in. So I can see I have my foundations users who have spent about 64.5 hours of practice overall together, and then my fluency builder who are at about 99.5 overall hours. If I click on either of these, it will take me to a list of all of the learners in that program, and it will show me the exact amount of time that each student has spent learning. So now I know I'm looking at Fluency Builder only because I clicked that graph, and I can see the language they're studying, their total time in the program, and then we'll actually break that down onto browser-based or desktop learning time versus mobile time. So again, that's one way that I can just get overall usage numbers. Again, I could even sort this right from low to high in terms of how much time learners are spending in the program. And of course, I can export this report right now, or even schedule it to be exported at a later time and date. So in case any of the faculty are reaching out to you once you have an administrator account, this is where you want to go, reports, usage, and then click on the program that you'd like. Now, if you don't only want to look at Fluency Builder or only want to look at Foundations, you can just go ahead and click the number down here where it says time across all products. So here I will click, and I'm looking at a similar view, but now it's all 74 learners in that particular group. And I'm looking at both students that are on Fluency Builder and Foundations. And now again, I can sort, I can see some folks are using it on a mobile app, a combination of the mobile app and the computer version. And again, I can go ahead and export that report to a spreadsheet and save that locally or on the cloud. Now you have some opportunities here to modify the view of your usage report. If you want to search for a specific student, you can go ahead and do that. So here I can see there's the demo account we were just looking at earlier. And so I can remove all of the other folks that I'm looking for and just search for a particular student. And I can also actually remove columns. So for example, I know that none of my students are going to be having coaching sessions. So let's just remove that column altogether. And now I can export a report with just the information that I'd like. So if you have any questions about the usage report, please let me know. Again, you can actually narrow this down to see how much mobile time they've had, how much time they've spent taking those placement or proficiency tests, and again, overall usage time. Now, folks, the second tab up here is my placement test results tab. This one is not used super frequently because it's only just going to tell us where those students placed at their initial setup. So once they took that placement test at the very beginning, they are now going to be shown here on this graph. So we can see their name, we can see their scaled score, how long they spent taking the test, and what level they were placed into. Again, if you'd like to see a breakdown, I mentioned earlier that your specific students are about 70% in Fluency Builder and about 30% in Foundations. So this graph would look a little bit different for you once you all get access to the program. Finally, we have the third tab, which is the Learner Growth Export. The Learner Growth Export is going to provide you with a spreadsheet format where you can see if students have taken multiple proficiency tests, it will record each one of those proficiency tests along with that original placement. So again, if I export this report, it'll tell me all of my students' initial placement. And remember, we have that score out of 400. It'll then show you each of their subsequent placement tests so we can then measure growth. Maybe they started out with a score of 200 out of 400. And then after working for half a semester, they're at 250. So we can measure and celebrate that growth for your learners. Again, all of these reports can always be exported just by clicking on the black export tab. Now, folks, these are the Catalyst usage reports, and it's always a good place to start for, again, a high-level overview of what everybody's been up to. One important column to look at is last activity date. This is where you can see when was the last time that my students used the program. So here I can see 2 students logged onto the program today. Then I have a student who used the program last week, a few students last week. And then again, the others going back to January. So if you do need to check in on students and see how frequently or when was the last time they're using the program, you can easily track that using last activity date. All right, so I'm just going to pause momentarily there to see if there are any questions about the Catalyst usage report or the other 2 tabs, and how, in case someone asks you for information about a specific student, how you can locate that student to see what they're doing and how much time they've spent practicing. All right, so I don't see or hear any questions, so let's move on to the next report. Now, over here in the top right, you'll see it says Rosetta Stone Catalyst. Well, if I click this drop-down menu, I actually have access to 2 additional product-specific reporting systems. For Fluency Builder, again, that's going to only target those learners who are in that intermediate to advanced pathway. All I need to do is export a report and open it with your preferred spreadsheet viewer. The exported report for Fluency Builder is going to look something like this. It's going to not only show you what students are doing, but also let you know how they're doing. And it's going to break down the specific lesson that they're working in. So remember, in Fluency Builder, we talked about there's a course name and then there's a lesson name. So here I can see that each of the students listed here are working on these different courses, right? Client relationships. And I can see the exact lesson that they've been working in, how much time, and how much percentage of progress they have in that specific lesson. So if you notice, for example, that this time in the lesson is taking a really long time and they're not progressing, they may be struggling with some of the specific information in that lesson. And finally, I have my 3rd tab, which is Foundations. And in Foundations, again, that's for those beginner learners. And this is where we really provide the most amount of detail about how a student is doing. So here on my learner progress report, I can actually dig down into a specific student to get much more information about exactly what they've been up to. So for example, I can click on a student here and it will take me to their learner progress report. I can choose the language that they're learning. And now it's going to tell me that this student has 3% progress. It can show me their score, their training time, etc. So here again, I can go ahead and sort this by status, by score, or even by the type of activity. So again, if I see here, the student has completed several activities and I can see their percentage score, but I also might notice that for certain types of activities, their score is lower than other types. And I can even notice if they have multiple attempts at any of those given activities. So again, this is the detail where we kind of drill down to a specific student and get all the information about that particular student. Again, all of our learners will be available here, and we can go ahead and see exactly how everybody's doing. We can see their scores and how much time they've spent on each activity. So for example, if I'm looking at a student like this, and I see that they're getting 100% on all of their pronunciation and speaking activities, but their writing activities, they're struggling, they're not completing them, or they're getting a lower score, then maybe I need to actually follow up with that student and provide them with more writing specific practice. So again, the learner progress report allows you to select a specific student and get more information. I also have the usage tab. And remember, usage is regarding time. Progress is regarding completion and scores. So again, here I can see my students, and I can again sort this for who's been using it the most amount of time. Finally, if I go to the third organization usage tab, this is going to compare usage based on the language. So here you can actually see what language is being used the most for all of the students in your organization. So again, now we can get all types of information, which of course we can always export and share with faculty that are looking for more information about their students' usage. So again, with that in mind, I just want to pause again to see if there are any questions about the foundation specific reports, how we can go all the way down to a specific student, or we can just look overall for our different languages or time. Now, I do see a question in the chat about access.
Hello, Mr. Pittman. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Manuel Robaina. I am the Learning Assistant Specialist here in Tampa campus. I used to enter as administrator with my email address. As you can see here, I just test my information in the chat. But right now, I cannot enter, and I don't know why. This is the website that I used to go to enter as administrator with my email address. But right now it doesn't allow me, and I don't know if it was because I changed the password of the computer, or it was because the website changed or something. Is that I'm not allowed to enter right now.
Okay, have you tried the link at the bottom that says reset password?
Yes, it's that it doesn't
Didn't send an email?
it doesn't work.
Okay.
When I click on it, it doesn't do anything.
All right, just give me one moment. I can actually access your information here. Do you happen to remember approximately when was the last time that you were able to access the system?
It was like several months ago.
Okay, give me one moment. All right.
The website that I sent you, Mr. Pittman, this is the right one that we have to now?
Yeah,
Because
login.rosettastone.com should work fine. And it does look like you have a group reporting administrator license that is good through July 2023. So let me see if I can figure out why that's not working. uagm.edu. Yeah. So you know what? I'm going to have to follow up with you following this session, because from what I can see, it does look like you have an active license and you should be able to log in with that, with those credentials. So I'm going to have to troubleshoot this a little bit more on our end to figure out why not. The one thing I might mention is if you do try to click the forgot password button on the main login page, you could check in your spam or your other folder in your email, because sometimes those emails get tagged depending on what your email filter system is. So if you have like a spam folder or a junk folder, it's a possibility that your password reset email got flagged and got placed in one of those folders. So if you're willing to take a look in your email for that, that's a good first step. And if you still don't have anything, then we'll go ahead and get this reset for you immediately following today's session.
I already did it. Is that when I send you the email, the option forgot password, it doesn't allow me when I click here. And I also check the email. I am doing once again, but unfortunately, I don't see in the spam or any other session like that they send me an email, because usually when this used to happen, I forgot password, they force you to write the email and they send you the information.
Okay.
But right now it doesn't allow me to do anything. I
Okay.
don't know, since when I train the professors and the students here, I use their own account and not mine. I don't know, maybe it's because time has passed or something. Is that it doesn't allow me, and I used to get the reports here for the
Right. Well, I am able to log in to your account. So I do know that the account is active and it's set up. So it's just simply a question of how to log in. You know what? I can actually change your password temporarily for you if that would be helpful. Would you like me to just go ahead and create a, oh no, actually, without knowing your old password, I can't go ahead and change your password. So I'll tell you what, we're gonna just go ahead through this session, and then I will communicate with you via email, and we'll make sure that we get your password reset and get you logged in. There might have been a change with the access. I know that your IT team was considering just using a single link to log in from Blackboard. So there's a possibility that perhaps the login, your direct sign-in got modified somehow, if that was actually pursued.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Pittman.
Of course, thank you for your patience, and we're going to get that settled here in just a few moments.
Thank you.
All right, so if there aren't any other questions about reporting, I would like to pivot away from this reports dashboard and talk a little bit more about the mobile app. So of course, we want to make sure that your learners have the opportunity to work on Rosetta Stone anytime and from anywhere. So included with your licenses is access to our award-winning mobile apps. We actually have the app available for all different devices and operating systems. And in fact, there are two different apps. One app is going to be for those learners in the foundations or beginner pathway. And the other app is for Fluency Builder at advanced or intermediate proficiency. So again, make sure those learners know that they should download that yellow background if they're placed in foundations, and the white background if they are placed in Fluency Builder. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about mobile apps because our foundation specific app has access to some additional extended learning opportunities. One of them is called Seek and Speak. And this is AI-powered learning where the Seek and Speak platform allows learners to use their camera to turn everyday objects into language practice using the latest object recognition technology. So it works similar to like a scavenger hunt where they will search for items to complete a quest. And using the camera, again, they will be able to then learn the meaning in the language that they're learning. So that is a really fun feature available for those foundations learners. Also available in the app, the stories that I talked about earlier, so that learners can access all of those stories on the go. And also that audio companion. Remember, the audio companion is for listening and speaking. That's great for driving, exercising, or taking public transportation, for example. Now, most important thing about the mobile app, and this is for both apps, is called offline mode. For both of those app experiences, we've developed offline mode to bring some equity to this platform and make sure that students always have access to their Rosetta Stone lessons without needing to worry about internet access. So even if some of your learners don't have unlimited data plans or reliable Wi-Fi at home, you can still use Rosetta Stone and access those lessons the same way that you would interact with them if you were connected to internet, by simply finding the lessons that you want and clicking use offline. It will then save those lessons locally to your phone or tablet, and you can access them for up to 30 days. Again, the experience on offline mode is exactly the same as if you were connected to the internet. The only thing we recommend is when the student is back on Wi-Fi again, log back into the app so that it can sync up all of their progress and usage time so the reports are accurate. All right, folks. So with that, we are going to now discuss some best practices and suggestions that we have for really optimizing the language acquisition on Rosetta Stone. The first thing I want to talk about is usage. We recommend using Rosetta Stone for a minimum of 1 to 2 hours per week. And of course, as you all know, as language experts, we recommend breaking that out into multiple sessions. Again, that repetition and frequency is going to actually serve students better to commit the new content to long-term memory and provide for quicker recall. So again, if they can get on 4 or 5 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes, that's really ideal. Again, more is better, but even if they only have 5 or 10 minutes, we'd rather them do that every day than maybe just saying a whole hour on a Sunday or something like that. As I mentioned before, we also recommend using a headset to optimize the student's ability to participate in the speech recognition activities. Again, the headset with an attached microphone in front of the mouth provides the best results, but of course, any kind of earbuds or headphones with an embedded microphone will also work. It will just be important for students to find a quiet space so that those microphones aren't picking up on any background sounds. Of course, as you know, language learning takes commitment. So we do want those learners to use it as much as consistently possible. One great tip is to recommend that your learners actually schedule their language practice time into their personal or academic calendars to help them keep track and really stay more consistent. When they treat those language practice sessions on Rosetta Stone as appointments, we found that they are able to achieve much more consistency. I also want to mention a recommendation that students can tap into other technology and other digital resources that are available for them for free. So maybe they enjoy listening to music or watching movies. Maybe they'd rather listen to a podcast or the news or read books. So why not recommend that those learners do all those things that they enjoy, but do it in that target language so they can spend more time practicing the language. Furthermore, we do suggest that they find a friend or a classmate to be a language buddy. Maybe those folks can meet up for an immersion coffee or lunch each week so they can help each other gain more confidence and get that communication practice. In this way, you create a safe space, again, where those folks can help each other in an immersive environment. Finally, we recommend finding ways to celebrate those learners who are successful in growing their language proficiency and in consistency using the program. So again, as a teacher, maybe you can keep a leaderboard for students, or you could send out a weekly or monthly update to give a shout out to the learners who are spending the most amount of time. That way you, of course, get to celebrate those students while also motivating other students to continue increasing their consistency and usage of the program. So with that, folks, we are actually going to come to the end of our session. I know that was a lot of material, so I appreciate your attention and engagement. Before we wrap up, I'd like to show you how to access our support site, which contains helpful articles and instructions on getting started and getting the most out of Rosetta Stone. The first and easiest way to get to our support site is simply by navigating to support.rosettastone.com. So again, I can go ahead and navigate to that website, support.rosettastone.com. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you that site in a second because I do want to point out a couple helpful resources. So here is the support site. And the easiest way to find what you're looking for is simply by using this little magnifying glass and typing in your search terms. So for example, remember that scope and sequence guide for Fluency Builder that I showed you earlier? Well, I could start typing that in right here. And look, there it is, scope and sequence guide for Fluency Builder. Another great resource we have is All About Catalyst. The All About Catalyst support article is going to provide you with lots of helpful information and allow you to review everything that we talked about today, including some reminders on how to export and view those reports. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste this into the chat box just in case anybody wants to go directly to this page and bookmark it or favorite it for future reference. You can also see that there is a chat feature where you can speak directly with one of our support representatives. So again, if you might need some assistance with resetting your password, you could also try navigating to support.rosettastone.com and clicking this chat box to speak directly to one of our helpful help desk representatives. So with that, folks, I just want to thank everybody so much for attending this Catalyst Administrator Tools orientation session. I wish you all a wonderful language learning experience. And please let me know if you have any questions by typing them into the Q&A box. Now, even if you don't have any questions, please don't leave quite yet. I do have a couple extra contact here to share with you. You can see that you can call our help desk anytime at the toll-free number listed on your screen. You can email me directly, or you can reach out to our support desk at instsupport@rosettastone.com. That would be another way to get support with a password reset. And then finally, that support site I just showed you all, support.rosettastone.com. The last thing we have here is a request to fill out a survey on today's session. To do the survey, you can either click the link in the chat box, or you can scan the QR code shown here on the screen with your mobile device. It'll only take about a minute, and we really appreciate any feedback that you have on today's session. So folks, with that, I just want to say thank you all so much for your attendance in today's session. Merci beaucoup, muchas gracias. I again wish you all the best. Never hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions about the learner experience, about how to generate and view those reports, or anything else that we can help you with. Again, you can email me directly, or you can always reach out on the website to our very responsive and supportive help desk professionals. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. And thank you, of course, as always, for partnering with us here at Rosetta Stone.